So unprepared. Let's go, man. It's time. Here we go again. Moon time, let's go. Okay, man. Okay. What game are you gonna play? Bro, it's so crazy how you have my notifications on, but you don't actually read the title. Shut up, bro.
Spotify isn't the app you think it is. You see, there's
already. So crazy, bro. So crazy. I'm gonna have to turn on my phone for this one, man. Go to Fat Rat streaming. What? No. Here we go. Here we go. Okay. Reaction time. Reaction time. Nightbot already, man. I'm running out of breath. Freak, man. Okay. Hopefully I don't die before the end of the stream. None of you can hear that. Okay. Good, good, good. There's a tornado alarm going on right now, man. I might die. But, moon. Moon time, moon time. Okay. Can that... I'm dying right now. Oh, yeah. Moon. Man. Spotify? Literally everyone I know uses Spotify for some reason. I don't get it. Just use YouTube. YouTube is better. In terms of music, playlists and stuff. Ignore that. But yeah, man. Everyone uses Spotify. I don't know why, man. I don't get it. I don't get it, man. I don't get it. I just use YouTube all the time. Playlist. It's easy work, man. Easy work. Yeah, apparently Moon is saying Spotify is not what you think, man. Okay.
Spotify isn't the app you think it is. You see, there's been a ton of apps and websites that stream music way before Spotify. Napster, Grooveshark, Pandora, Deezer, and yet all these companies are either struggling to stay afloat, defunct, or destroyed by lawsuits.
Never heard of any of these.
Put, the business model of streaming music for free isn't really profitable or in most cases even legal. I mean, Napster was literally the prototype for Spotify. It was the same service and the same idea, and yet in just 3 years, Napster went bankrupt with $10 million in debt. But somehow Spotify comes out on top, raking in over $10 billion in 2021.
Billion?
So how can Spotify possibly be making this much money? How can streaming music that's owned by record labels with limited ads and being forced to pay 30% of all its revenue to its biggest competitor, Apple, still be standing so strong?
That's what I'm saying.
Spotify collapse like Napster? When I'm trying to answer these questions, I fell down a rabbit hole. Corruption, military AI technology, emotional manipulation.
What does the military have to do with this? What the?
And censorship. You see, the story of Spotify goes far beyond music alone. So to understand how Spotify truly makes its money, let's head back to where it all started.
The military? What?
For such a huge presence, Spotify was founded quite late into the history of streaming and downloading music. Lots of competitors came before it and failed to succeed. The difference with Spotify was its founder, Daniel Ek. Daniel was, in all senses of the word, a business prodigy. While everyone else
All because SoundCloud.
His age was still playing Mario 64. Daniel was building a business. At just 13 years old, Daniel
I wish I had that much money.
Business of many as a web designer. His contract started at $100, but they quickly grew in size until he was charging $5,000 per website. Daniel even hired other kids, bribing them with video games as they worked on his websites in the school computer room.
What?
And then just 5 years later, at the age of 18, and Daniel was making $50,000 a month and had a team of 25 people under him. After working on various companies such as eBay, Daniel Ek would soon settle as the founder of an advertising company. This too was then sold in 2006, leaving Daniel a millionaire by his early 20s. This rocketing career had put Daniel in contact with lots of powerful people who would be the heralds of a new golden age for tech startups. For example, Daniel had made contacts with the founder of uTorrent, a man named Ludwig. Ludwig would later work as one of Daniel's lead developers. It was these sorts of connections that would be a huge asset to Daniel, assets that were invaluable for his most ambitious project yet, Spotify. Like I mentioned, the idea for Spotify wasn't new. There had been lots of music streaming and downloading services before. The most prominent of these, and the one which gave the most inspiration for Ek, was Napster. Now, Napster wasn't particularly polished or even very user-friendly, but the greatness of Napster was that it gave its users unlimited free access to a vast range of music. People loved what they could discover through the platform. It was for this reason that it exploded in popularity shortly after its founding. However, the trouble for Napster was exactly that. It was free. Its emphasis on peer-to-peer sharing made the platform perfect for shared pirated music.
Everyone loves free
Napster's
things,
short
man.
life was marked by both a massive influx of users, but also massive amounts of lawsuits.
Okay. Bro, I actually can't. Bro, I'm about to die, man. Hold on, I need to unbear. I'm back. I'm alive. Sorry, man. Just checked some technical difficulties, man. I'm so glad your messages aren't popping up here, man. Okay. It's time. Breaking the mold.
The troubles for Napster began when Metallica happened to hear a song they had made being played on someone's car radio, and yet they hadn't actually released the song. Through some snooping, they found out that a demo of the track had been leaked on Napster and was circulating across the internet, as well as all their other work. This led Metallica to file a lawsuit against Napster for copyright infringement in March of 2000, just 1 year after Napster was released. Then Dr. Dre was quick to follow, also suing Napster a month later. The floodgates were open, and soon enough, Napster was buried in legal challenges and copyright accusations. Although this would soon spell the end for Napster, it didn't dent its short-term popularity and probably increased its notoriety if anything. I mean, at its peak, Napster had amassed over 18 million registered users. College campuses even had to ban Napster from their internet networks, after Napster's MP3 downloads made up over 60% of colleges' external network traffic. Eventually, Napster's legal troubles caught up with them. And
that's crazy, man. That's crazy.
But for a brief period of time, Napster had made music a public good. It was freely available to anyone with a
Where's
computer
Spotify?
and
Where's
an internet
Spotify?
connection. The idea idea of music existing at one's fingertips was a tantalizing idea for many startups, which is why you'd see many similar services prop up out of nowhere. For example, LimeWire and Kazaa were almost carbon copies of one another, offering the same service as Napster and also going down the same way Napster would, by being shut down by copyright lawsuits. It seemed like the model for free instant music was incompatible with a legal successful business. However, one man would end up breaking this mold, which brings us
Jeff
back to
Bezos.
Daniel Ek. Daniel, prior to founding Spotify, was well aware of the dangers, but thought that they would work themselves out. He had seen Napster and all the others picked off one by one, but this didn't faze him. Where some might see adversity, Daniel was seeing opportunity. The technology already existed for something like Spotify, and as streaming and internet connections became faster by the day, it seemed certain that streaming music for free would become a reality.
Yep, YouTube, easy. Easy. Okay, hold on. Okay, I'm back. One of these days, man, you're gonna see my face. One of these
The
days.
real problem here was convincing the record labels who held all the legal power over music to allow one of these services to exist. The artist would also need to be cut in, although their take would be far exceeded by the giants of the industry. For Daniel though, these were the problems of the future. The only thing on his mind was the product. So by using the money he gained from his early years, as well as some angel investments from his good connections, and Daniel would place all his chips on Spotify.
Bro, every time I see those type of like what is it called? Like what do you call these? What do you call
as well as
these?
some angel investments from his good connections, and Daniel.
These like I found out what these are called, like not this specific type of thing, but like a thing that I want. Like almost all streamers use it. It's like Go XLR thing, man. It looks so inconvenient in things, man. So I don't have to go into OBS and just turn down some of the volume. And it looks so convenient, bro. I need it. I need to focus on PC first. Focus on PC.
Who would place all his chips on Spotify. Back then, Spotify was using innovative technology that enabled
Stream board? What do you mean?
the client to download songs in bite-sized chunks, rather than the whole
It's
songs
called a Go
all albums
XLR.
at one time. Similar to how YouTube works. By designing the app in this way, Spotify reduced buffering substantially and even enabled
Wait, yeah. If anything, people should have used YouTube more because they didn't have ads back then, right? Winner. Okay.
instant playback for songs on the app. In this way, Spotify was already different from Napster, but it still paid homage in other ways. For example, Spotify's original catalog of music was nearly completely pirated. Spotify hadn't even been released, so there was no way Daniel was going to convince the record labels to let him use a legit catalog, which put Spotify dangerously close to Napster in the way it did business, although it still lacked peer-to-peer sharing. After months of demanding work from Daniel and a small team of developers, Spotify was released first as a beta test. The blood, sweat and tears the team had put into the app was clearly visible, because everyone who used Spotify loved its ease of use and lack of buffering. It was an amazing product, but before it was even released, Daniel would find out the harsh truth that it wouldn't ever live up to his idealistic dreams for the music world. Spotify was brought down to earth once Daniel learned what the record labels would ask for to license their music. And once he finally convinced the labels to sit down, things didn't go as planned. You see, Ek proposed to the labels that Spotify would be a free app, where all the revenue would be generated from ads. And to his dismay, the record labels were horrified. Instead, the labels demanded a fixed price for each stream of any song or album. Obviously, this solution wouldn't work, so a compromise was made. Spotify would still have its free model with ads, but would also offer a monthly subscription in return for no ads and other features.
I can just imagine like people arguing about a song. Like, you should pay this much for this song, and the song is called like Doo-Doo Fart or something like that, man. Like, Doo-Doo Fart changes lives. It needs this money. You need to pay this exact amount of money. Doo-Doo Fart is gonna change the world. So it sounds so weird. Like,
the record labels would take a huge
Doo-Doo
cut from
Fart
premium money, as well as from the advertising revenue. Amazingly for Daniel, the deal was struck, and Spotify was now 2 steps up from Napster. Daniel had seemingly done the impossible. He had put the record labels at bay, and everything was perfect. However, this came with big costs for the app. It would effectively stun the application from its inception. Daniel was horrified to see that lots of the features they had worked on so hard for the free version would be removed, placed behind a paywall. For a business that had been about the product from day one, even just releasing was costing the company company its founding principles.
Ooh.
But even worse than this was the awful position these deals put Spotify into. The benefits of no longer relying on a pirated catalog were far outshined by the power that the music industry now had over Spotify. The big record labels even took a cut of Spotify itself, helping themselves to shares in the company. They had total control of Spotify. So one question remained for Daniel: was Spotify even worth it? Well, the answer to this was yes. And so Spotify sold out. While this deal did let Spotify survive as a company, avoiding the downfalls of Napster and so many other platforms, this deal, however, also changed the platform significantly. Record labels own so much of Spotify now that they have implemented their own changes to the platform. One of these changes is based around playlists. Spotify puts a lot of emphasis on playlists. They're the front and center of the main page. The vast majority of these playlists are algorithmically derived. It's usually impossible to tell whether a human or robot chose the songs. But how does Spotify choose which songs to put in them? Well, the facts are that Spotify doesn't actually choose. The record labels choose. These playlists are a huge part of Spotify, and it's how most people around the world listen to their music. And yet these playlists are perfectly designed to promote a small group of popular artists which the music industry chooses. Each playlist only includes the music that these record labels want to promote, which leaves independent artists completely excluded from a huge part of the platform. This creates...
Are you sure you should consider these what is it called? These street performers, like independent artists? I don't know. Like anything could be music, I guess, but I wouldn't take it that far, not gonna lie. Like, they have to have a studio to record or something at least, man. Like, I don't know, man. Okay. I smell blood again, man.
Creation of music eventually became disastrous for small
Yo,
artists,
Drake.
as it makes
Hey,
it
yo.
almost impossible for them to be seen by the public eye. However, this playlist problem is just a small part of the issue. There are numerous similar systems all working to promote the record label's interests at the expense of a level playing field. From the browse system to the homepage to even the search function, Spotify has given the record labels the power to curate people's music. Not only does it directly cause a homogenized corporate musical landscape on the site, it also directly funnels listeners towards certain large record labels' music. This mechanism gives the labels an even larger share of the profits that they already get. Because record labels get shares in Spotify, part of the profits, lots of royalties from streams, and then direct curation of the platform. But what's there for the artists, for the people who actually made the music? Well, on average, each stream gives an artist just $0.0033, an absolutely minuscule amount. This effectively means
that's
they
not
need
even
a
real
giant
money.
audience to make even small amounts of money from Spotify. I mean, most artists have to rely on constant touring to stay afloat, a prospect that was made even worse by the pandemic. And as the big record labels increase their control over Spotify, they're able to squeeze even more money from the platform. This money inevitably has to come from other groups' shares, with the artists taking the hardest hit to their bottom line.
Guys, I'm gonna go on tour soon. I'm gonna go to Chicago. No. I'm gonna go to what is it called? I'm gonna go to California, Nevada, Tennessee, and Texas. I'm coming back here. Yeah, man. I'm gonna go on tour. Coming soon. Fat Rat on tour.
It's therefore no wonder that artists have vocally protested and boycotted Spotify numerous times over its lifespan. Now, one of the most recent boycotts was done by Neil Young, and while yes, this had to do a lot with Joe Rogan and his naughty words, it was also about Spotify's business model and the minuscule amount of royalties being paid to artists. And Neil Young wasn't the first. From Taylor Swift to the Beatles, lots of huge artists have tried to resist Spotify's dominance over the music industry. And yet, despite this, all the artists that tried to boycott Spotify are now back on the platform. Even Neil Young, who was protesting Spotify just months ago, has now quietly rejoined the platform.
Wait a minute.
Unsatisfied with the power that Spotify's launch deal gave them, various giants of the music industry have used every tool in their arsenal to exploit Spotify's relative weakness. This has come in the form of mountains of legal challenges, not unlike those faced by Napster, and Spotify has only managed to weather the storm because of their insider status. For example, Wixen Music Publishing sued Spotify in 2018 for infringing on the rights of their artists. Artists such as Neil Young and the Black Keys. This was only one record label, and they sued Spotify for $1.6 billion. Spotify settled for an undisclosed amount, which clearly shows how Spotify is at the mercy of these companies. And despite striking deals that are ludicrously lucrative for them, the record labels always want more. Of course, all these lawsuits are disguised as being for the artist's benefits. But then who are these mysterious people? Who are these greedy, ruthless companies demanding more and more? Well, to really understand the problem with Spotify, we need to have a closer look at who's pulling the strings. You see, back in 2015, Spotify sought to secure another $500 million of investments to delay going public, all because of the looming threats of lawsuits. Usually when companies do this, they refer themselves to a third party that can broker a deal with other investors. Spotify did this because they needed money. They desperately needed investors. And one of the main investors that would poison Spotify for years to come was Goldman Sachs.
Sachs? Wait.
But before we continue, I want to talk to you about the video sponsor, Keeps. Did you know that 2 out of 3 guys will experience hair loss by age 35?
That's sad.
Because Spotify needed money back. Goldman Sachs seemed like a godsend for Spotify back in 2000.
Okay.
Goldman Sachs seemed like a godsend for Spotify back in 2018 because Spotify needed money
Skip,
badly,
be quiet, bro.
which seems strange because at the same time, Spotify was growing exponentially. In 2011, Spotify reported a client base of 1 million paying customers across Europe in March 2011, and by September 2011, that number was 2 million. Then in June 2015, this number was 75 million users. Spotify's growth was unprecedented, and Daniel Ek had achieved the impossible. By this point, Spotify was a household name. However, there was one issue. With its huge international presence, everyone wanted a piece of Spotify. Lawsuits, ruthless competition from Apple Music, and artists threatening the platform completely, along with extra server costs, and Spotify needed money fast. They had to have power over the record labels, they needed to pay off all the lawsuits and defend the company from its ruthless competition. And to have the funds and management to do this, Spotify needed big investments quick, and who better to provide these investments than Goldman Sachs? Now, who's Goldman Sachs? Well, Goldman Sachs
have Gold Sachs, man.
Wrong reasons. Most notably, in 2007, Goldman Sachs shorted millions of dollars worth of mortgage-backed securities for a huge profit.
Bro, sometimes it sounds like he's saying sex, man.
For years.
1.7% here, loss of 37 points or so. Apple shares are just getting hammered this morning.
We're down by between 3 and 4.5% generally across these markets. Let's talk about the speed with which we are watching this market deteriorate. We're red everywhere, essentially, down by 4-5%.
And then when the public went broke and the entire world economy
4-5%.
collapsed, the government gave Goldman Sachs
Ouch.
an extra $10 billion to keep this company happy.
Billion?
This was just one example of many that highlighted the insane power Goldman Sachs has over the world. But their power doesn't just extend to the US. Goldman Sachs is also credited with the destruction of the Greek government by masking the national debt the country had been accruing from 1998 to 2009. This in turn caused the 2010 EU sovereign debt crisis, which, long story short, helped end several EU national governments, namely Ireland, Portugal, Italy and France, among several others, with many of these countries going broke and then having to be bailed out by Goldman Sachs in return for power. Because of this reliance, Goldman Sachs oftentimes dictates economic policies in these countries, similar to how they control the companies reliant upon them, companies like Spotify. You see, the deal between Goldman Sachs and Spotify seemed perfect for Spotify at the time, just like it seemed perfect for EU governments going broke. This 2018 deal was that Goldman Sachs would use their partner's seed money to grow Spotify, and in return, Goldman Sachs would have big shares in the company, or at least that's what they wanted Spotify to think. The true value for Goldman Sachs would later become more apparent in future years, but bear with me, we'll get onto that soon. Okay, so then who did Goldman Sachs pick to invest in Spotify? Well, naturally, more members of their banking aristocracy. Goldman Sachs offered to help Spotify secure $500 million in investments, with most of these investments coming from monopoly venture capital firms such as Technology Crossover Ventures, or TTV for short. For a long time, TTV and Goldman Sachs have worked hand in hand to
Let's go to Twitch.tv, let's go.
Media. It's why they work together to dominate the current online landscape. They have massive control over Airbnb,
Man, why do you
Facebook,
wait?
Netflix and Zillow.
ByteDance. Oh, it's the second TikTok. That's crazy. Bro, why do old people have control of the internet? They don't know what to do with it, man. It's so annoying. Like, actually, man.
All of these companies are heavily invested by these two. Okay, but what's the big deal? I mean, Goldman Sachs is responsible for international government collapse and the destruction of the American housing market, but we're talking about Spotify. Well, Goldman Sachs is seeking to capitalize on the streaming future of music. Goldman Sachs has been creating its own homogeny of music streaming services. It does this so it can profit from you by harvesting user data, partnering with established music industry titans, and profiteering from advertisements. It was by making these deals with Goldman Sachs that Spotify guaranteed itself to fall down a dark path, which will be explained shortly. But Goldman Sachs wasn't the only one. JP Morgan was also doing the exact same thing.
Where does the military come in?
Companies have extremely questionable ethics.
So confused.
The consequences of this are becoming apparent with Spotify. At first, the real main consequence was just from others knowing about Goldman Sachs' investment in the first place. Because once Spotify had received additional investment from investors, the record labels would then try to pocket more shares for themselves despite Spotify still being unprofitable, while at the same time the musicians on Spotify were hitting back at the company for their laughable revenue sharing with their artists. And these weren't just small artists. These artists included the greats like Pink Floyd and the
Drake.
Beatles, among many others. But investors didn't care about that. They understood that Spotify had such leverage over the music world that all bands would eventually have to crawl back to Spotify or choose to make less money. Because the truth was, Spotify was extremely
Drake.
popular now,
Oh my
with
God.
this growth then being accelerated after Spotify quickly struck an agreement with Facebook to incorporate Spotify on their platform. This was then followed by other Spotify bundles, tons of marketing, and the word of mouth in this quick free instant music app. With a simple user design, cheap costs, and massive catalogue of music, and Spotify was unstoppable. Yet despite its popularity, the site still wasn't breaking even, and time was ticking
do you
before
mean by that?
investors would start to raise some eyebrows over Spotify's long-term future.
Ooh.
It was becoming very clear that Spotify can no longer just rely on ads in its premium subscriptions.
It can.
Instead, to gain more power, trust, and revenue, Spotify needed better cash streams. Spotify's first and most effective cash stream would be to create their own musical hits and become the most successful record label. This would then give Spotify more leverage and power over the record labels, whilst also generating more revenue for the app. To do this, Spotify would invest all of its money into AI technology. Now, this AI technology
okay.
was great for many users. It provided users many songs that they would never have heard before. However, by Spotify using more AI technology, Spotify could make their own songs go viral and promote them to the top of the music industry. This would then be a major threat to the record labels and would assert Spotify's control of the music industry. While at the same time, Spotify can then censor their competition, with Spotify already banning songs and artists for hate speech and their own personal controversies. By doing this, Spotify has free reign to pick who becomes popular and who doesn't. And this AI technology is becoming extremely advanced, where this AI takes popular song lyrics from the past and changes the words and vocals to match AI-generated drum beats.
Using deep neural networks, Ava looks for patterns in this course, and from a couple of bars of existing music, it actually tries to infer what notes should come next in those tracks.
Ooh, I'm hitting
And
that.
once Ava gets good at those predictions, it can actually build a set of mathematical rules for that style of music.
Speaking of predictions, like beat predictions, dude, every Mexican song, I don't care if I'm racist or not, I hate Mexican people. No, I'm kidding. No, like every time you hear a Mexican song, this beat always heard like like the only thing that changes about it is the tempo and like how fast it goes and stuff. Like, why do they always have the same beat, man? As soon as you hear that beat, just know it's gonna be a Mexican song, man. That's all I'm gonna say, man. That's all I'm gonna say.
In order to create its own original
There's
composition.
8 minutes
In fact,
left, man.
CEO Daniel Ek is positioning himself to be on top of the AI industry, with Daniel Ek
Why,
announcing that
man?
his investment
Mark
company,
Zuckerberg didn't do
Materia,
that.
was going to be donating $150 million to a military defense contractor named
Military-
Helsing, a military contractor that also specializes in artificial intelligence. Helsing is, in their own words, a new type of artificial intelligence company focused on defense and security.
Facecam? What do you mean?
Defense may seem a surprising investment for us, but we share Helsing's conviction that liberal democratic values are worth defending and that artificial intelligence will be an essential capability to keep us safe. And this software is crazy advanced. This is AI that gathers data from multiple sensors of vehicles and systems to help people process complex and diverse information more reliably and act quickly. Using the secrets of this AI technology, and Spotify's music could cause a wave in the music industry. However, Spotify won't just be making money through its artificial songs. Spotify is adopting all of the Netflix business model. They
Huh?
won't just create
Netflix?
their own music. They're now starting to license their own exclusive content. The
Yes.
biggest example of this was the $100 million deal between Spotify and Joe Rogan. In May
Joe
of 2020,
Rogan?
Joe Rogan signed a licensing agreement with Spotify to be the exclusive platform for his podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience. Back then, Joe's podcast was a great way to hear about people, niches, and opinions never spoken about before. The long-form style podcast gave voices and opinions that the mainstream ignored, with Joe Rogan's popularity inching every year.
I'm gonna be in the
His
Joe
podcast
Rogan
would then be littered with
podcast.
celebrity appearances, which skyrocketed his show to new heights. And by 2017, Joe Rogan was the #1 international podcaster. And yet Joe Rogan's
Let's
show was
go.
completely free on YouTube. With such a loyal fan
Huh.
base, this was the
That's
perfect
funny.
content to bring in new users to Spotify. And so in 2021, Joe Rogan received $100 million to make his show for Spotify members only. However, with these big investors breathing down Spotify's neck, it would mean that Joe Rogan, a man known for his freedom-loving libertarian roots, would be forced into self-censorship. Since Joe Rogan moved to
Hate hearing
Spotify,
that.
his show has openly been censored on the platform, with
Why?
Spotify's team reviewing thousands of his podcasts to
Why?
remove all content that didn't fit their investors'
Why?
beliefs. Or more importantly, what increases Spotify's ESG score, which
What
is
does
why
that
the
mean?
company would have to remove 75 Joe Rogan podcasts.
Hmm?
But because Spotify was so desperate for their investors, they couldn't handle lowering Spotify's special ESG rating score. Little
is
did
it?
they know, Joe Rogan would be hit by a cancel culture wave. In October
Uh-huh.
2021, Joe Rogan had a conversation with CNN's in-house medical advisor, Sanjay Gupta. Because a few days prior, Rogan had contracted COVID-19 and was prescribed
Oh, and he's telling people
ivermectin.
not to
A
take
CNN
the-
report
okay.
would later air shortly after Rogan's Instagram post regarding his medical condition and condemning Rogan for taking and promoting a horse dewormer.
One of those drugs he mentioned, ivermectin, is something more often used to deworm horses.
As such, Rogan condemned Gupta
Deworm.
with lying
Wait. Deworm? Also. This reminds me of that one movie I saw in health class. It was about a virus. It's called Pandemic, I'm pretty sure. No, not the cartoon version. Don't search it up. Don't search out the cartoon version. Bully. You're just saying random shit at this point, man. No, it was about a pandemic around the world, and then it just someone was like a conspiracy theorist, like Joe Rogan over here, man. He took a specific drug, and he made a video before it did anything. It was mid. Be quiet. And he took the drug thing, and then a day after he got better, and then he told everyone that that specific drug is gonna make you feel better, even though there's no scientific evidence. And then he got arrested, I'm pretty sure, or detained, and I think he died at the end. I don't know. And then, bro, that whole thing started just because someone didn't wash their hands. Are you serious? Spoiler alert, everything started. Thank you, Nightbot. Thank you. Thank you very much.
for his news company and misrepresenting medical options for those with COVID-19. Joe Rogan then also added that he believed that vaccination
Crazy,
should
right?
be optional. Because of this, Joe Rogan would obviously be lampooned by the mainstream media.
What does that mean?
Frequently accused of spreading false information, with all of this heat coming to a clash on December 30th.
Lampooned?
When Joe Rogan would have an interview with Dr. Robert Malone. On this episode, Dr. Malone, one of
A
the
doctor.
developers of the mRNA vaccines, would go on to compare the lockdown, mask mandates, and mandatory vaccinations as mass formation psychosis.
What does that mean?
As the clips of this portion of Rogan's podcast surfaced on YouTube, a real mass psychosis occurred, and many wanted to have Rogan
Masochist.
burned at the stake, with Rogan being demonized as a menace to public health, and an open letter was sent to Spotify signed by 270 US healthcare officials asking for the platform to censor Rogan's podcast. Then following this scandal,
What the-
billboard
who is
corporate
he?
rock icon Neil Young threatened Spotify if they didn't remove the Joe Rogan experience from the platform. If they didn't remove his content, he would remove his music. And so in January 2022, he actually did, along with other
What?
boomer artists such as Bruce Springsteen.
Boomer artists.
Even though these artists would eventually call back, Spotify would go on to censor episodes and add content advisory panels to
Why?
all content discussing these
Why?
controversial topics.
Why?
Or in other words, if Spotify actually did allow freedom of content on the platform, then investors would give Spotify a bad investment score, meaning that current and new investors would be more likely to pull out of Spotify and put Spotify on the verge of bankruptcy. But while licensing and making their own content was one way of making money, it still wasn't enough for Spotify to retain its dominance. Instead, the real money for Spotify came, like with all social media apps, from selling user data. We can see this in the book Spotify Teardown Inside the Black Box of Streaming Music. It was a book written by a group of 5 academics who spent years studying the service. Spotify, they argue, exists at the confluence of industries such as music, advertising technology, and finance, rather than just being an independent player with the potential to shape the future of the music business. In the book, they describe how by using your emotions, playlists, and in-app behavior,
Emotions.
Spotify sells your emotional response data to advertisers, meaning the albums you listen to could very well be chosen to be a gateway for sales across other industries. And in order to keep harvesting this data, Spotify's AI algorithms work to addict you to the app for as long as possible. This is done through Discover Weekly, Release Radar, and Daily Mixes, which are all based on personal listening habits which self-reinforce the more you stay in your lane. Curated playlists they add tend to be
Wait,
happy
say it again.
because the more you listen to cheery, happy music, the more likely you are to remain listening on the app. And
Okay,
by
okay.
listening more on the app, the more time they have to extract data. And by trying to make money this way, Spotify's business model has moved away from streaming and into data harvesting. So what sort of data is Spotify actually collecting from you? Well, just think about your first breakup. Do you remember the deep pain you felt? What did you do? Well, for a while, you may listen to a few songs repeatedly to make yourself feel better and cope with your pain. And by doing this, you taught an algorithm and artificial intelligence something about how humans, namely yourself, manage.
Well, I know what I have to do now. You can see that. Yeah, you can see that. Wow. Well, after I'm done streaming for today, man, I'm gonna have to do a lot of things.
Your emotional trauma through music. From the minute you open the app, Spotify is tracking how you interact with it, from touches and taps to playlist creation to music discovery and artist curation. This is how the app really makes its money. And all this behavior you're feeding the algorithm isn't the only thing it's tracking either. A quick foray into their privacy policy is chilling. Imagine all the conscious decisions
Like what?
you've made in the app to pick a song, and then combine that with the location data, social media contacts, speakers, and IP addresses, and Spotify starts to have a very clear picture of the global population's psyche.
That's deep.
The way Spotify makes money is a sinister omen for our future society. A world where every emotion we feel, love, jealousy, hate, ambition, calmness, is all being fed into a giant AI machine that cuts up and
using emotions against you. That's deep.
sells your emotions to the highest bidder. A world where media, music, and content creation is monopolized with the control of mega banks and their investors. And with the creeping rise of the metaverse and the changing technological landscape, it's almost...
I want to get in the metaverse. I want a VR headset right now. Can someone I'll send my PO box in the description, and one of you lucky people can send me a Oculus Quest 2 for free.
There's a certainty that these things will be the new norm. However, it does seem
For
that
free.
for Spotify to exist, for us to have any streaming service with an amazing array of music, Spotify has to ride the wave of this current societal trend.
No, broke boy, shut up.
Perhaps the only way for big tech businesses to survive anymore is to capitulate to the demands of corporate overlords that leech the creativity of groundbreaking ideas.
You're a corporate
and if
overlord.
that's the case, I guess we can rejoice in
I'm
the
joking,
small
I'm joking.
victories. The victories of a big tech platform like Spotify keeping up, quote, controversial topics, no matter the noise at the mob. But are we really at a point where we have to feel grateful for only minor censorship? Are we really at a point now where our emotions being sold into a giant AI-powered technology is worth it to give the big labels even more money? A world where everything we think and feel is monitored without our consent. And will this sort of behavior eventually bring a backlash against big tech? Hopefully this will be a new trend. A trend where we regain control of our emotions, impulses, freedom, and the autonomy of our brains.
The Matrix might actually be real at some point in real life, man. That's kind of crazy. Okay, hold on. I was gonna. Okay. So, that was one moon video out of 3.
I hate Jeff Bezos.
Okay. You know what? We're gonna watch one more moon video, man. I don't. The last one doesn't seem.
I hate Jeff Bezos, but at the same time, his story is remarkable. From
What the?
working at McDonald's and being a lonely loser to creating a
Wow.
trillion-dollar empire, where almost all major online companies rely on Jeff Bezos and Amazon to stay on the internet. But you see, Jeff
That's
Bezos
deep.
doesn't just control the internet, no, he runs an actual empire, with his fingers in books, groceries, pharmaceuticals, the media, the military, and the CIA.
The CIA and the military. What? That's crazy, man. Also, speaking of Amazon, you could give me a free sub with Amazon Prime. No, I'm kidding.
Just to name a
I don't
tiny
have that
few,
set up.
Not to mention all the other companies that Jeff Bezos has shares in. And by doing all of this, Jeff Bezos has amassed more than $130 billion in just personal fortunes. It's no wonder he has a seat on the board of the Pentagon. No wonder his
Pentagon?
leaks were covered up and supported by
Huh? Wiener Pig King?
the media. There shouldn't be any shock that he doesn't pay any income tax.
Of course. Why do rich people... Oh my gosh, bro, I'm gonna explode, man. I'm gonna explode. Bro, why do rich people never pay taxes? Taxes, man. Man, we're all forced to pay taxes. Why can't you pay taxes? Absolute greedy bastard. I don't get it. I don't get it. Pay taxes or else you're dumb. I don't know.
But the real question is what's fueling this empire? How is he allowed to be a modern-day robber baron without any consequences? And what actions did he have to take to get in the position he's in today? Well, when you reveal the veil of Jeff Bezos' true power, when you pull that curtain back and see what's really
His
behind his
pee-pee
fortunes,
pics.
trust me, it's nasty.
Nasty. Ugh. I like that. I like that.
Jeff Bezos was born to Ted and Jacqueline Jorgensen on January 12,
Did you-
1964. The family lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where Jeff would spend the majority of his early years. Jeff's real biological father was never in the picture, as Jeff's father left when he was only 1 year old.
Wow.
In fact, Ted never actually knew who his son really was until he was eventually contacted
That's
for a
so
book interview
sad.
in 2014. Jeff's mother would eventually go on to marry Michael Bezos, and both her and her son would end up taking his last name. From a young age, Jeff was clearly an extremely smart kid, with obsessive interest in technology and construction. He spent all his summers working
I'm obsessed with technology. Come on, I'm smart. I'm smart.
on a farm
I'm
with his
smart, man.
grandfather, where he learned how to be self-reliant when it came to building things and fixing machinery. And back in
Okay.
school, Jeff was excelling in his academics. and was
Okay, he looks kind of clean, that one.
placed into the gifted program at his high school, even being named valedictorian of his year. And while still in school, he would earn money on the side by working at McDonald's. During his shifts, Jeff would hyper-focus on whatever task he was currently doing, paying specific attention to customer service and the automation process.
Okay.
He later explained that even at McDonald's, he never worked thinking about the present. His mind was always focused on future plans.
Okay.
And these plans were far from small. After being fascinated by the moon landing, he wanted to become
Is he beating his wiener on the moon?
future plans. And these plans
Bro.
were far from small. After being fascinated
No. Look at this guy. Look at this guy on the right. The first bust on the moon,
by
bro.
the moon landing,
Made by him. Made by him. Oh my.
he wanted to become
Nah, bro. No.
future plans. And these plans were far from small. After being fascinated by the moon landing, he wanted to become a space entrepreneur.
Nah, bro. No way. No way. Nah, man. The first bust on the moon. One small wiener for... Wait. One small wiener for man. One big bust for mankind. Truly poetic, man. Very poetic. Poetic.
and often told his teachers that the future of mankind is not on this planet. Jeff's
What?
interest in conquering space
so
would be a
crazy.
lifelong ambition, but this dream of going into space was still a dream. Jeff still needed to graduate high school, and once he did, Jeff had the grades and finances to get into pretty much any higher education he wanted, and would eventually decide
That's
on the
crazy.
University of Princeton in New Jersey. He would initially pursue a degree in physics, but quickly decided to switch over to engineering and computer science. Similar to his previous education, he was academically among the top in his class, and was later offered jobs at Intel and Nokia once he received his degree. However, Jeff instead decided to try working at a telecommunications startup called Fitel. He would eventually land a job at D.E. Shaw & Co. hedge fund when he was only 26 years old. Once he was working at this hedge fund, Jeff rose rapidly through the ranks. And bear in mind, this was during an economic downturn in the 90s. Jeff's rise in D.E. Shaw was extremely impressive to all his co-workers. He was working with some of the most prestigious hedge funds in America, in one of the most...
Bro, I just remembered there's a song that some women made, man. Oh, why did they make that song? I forgot how it goes, but some part is like, oh wait, no, I remember exactly how it goes now. Okay, it's like 1964, Jeffrey Bezos. What? Who made that song? If you made that song, no, I'm not gonna say it. No, but that was a little too crazy. It was a little too crazy.
Most cutthroat industries in the world, and still managed to land on top. Despite all the competition he was facing, both with other employees vying for limited high-ranking staff positions, as well as all the external strife against other competing hedge funds. Even with these challenges, Jeff Bezos
I made it.
became the youngest senior vice president in D.E. Shaw's history after only 4 years of working at the company. It was in this time working at D.E. Shaw where he would pick up crucial financial managerial skills that would eventually translate to his eventual success with Amazon. He would later explain that the managers of the investment firm, namely its CEO David Shaw,
David Shaw, like Shaw the sheep. It's Shaw the sheep. Do. It's Shaw the sheep. Do. I don't get why some people are scared of stop motion animation. It's just clay moving around, man. I don't get it. You see, story time. My little brother, he's scared of Gumby. That Gumby. I don't know how to describe him. Gumby. If you don't know Gumby, then you're dumb. I'm kidding. But Gumby is like a clay thing that can shapeshift. And he had a dream where Gumby was chasing him and he suffocated him to death. And ever since then, he's been scared of Gumby. Or just stop motion in general. I don't know. I don't know why. I don't get it.
taught him all about, quote, things like HR, recruiting, and what kind of people to hire. Jeff was having so much success in Wall Street that he would likely have stayed in that area for the rest of his career. But in this time, the internet was...
Looks like he needs Keeps. The sponsor for today's stream is brought to you by Keep. No. Imagine.
rapidly growing. Almost no one was really paying attention to it, but Jeff couldn't ignore the staggering growth of the internet. This was his opportunity to shine. He was enthralled by the consistently increasing online stock numbers, along with the investment potential of the internet after it had been growing at a rate of 2,300% annually. And so in 1994, Jeff told his boss about the idea of leaving D.E. Shaw and launching an online startup. But of course, in this time, the internet was still seen as a novel idea, an idea only for the computer nerds, which is why when Jeff told his boss this,
and now the nerds rule the world. That's crazy. My nose keeps getting so stuffed, man. I hate that.
He was met with tons of discouragement. In fact, Shaw told him that this idea was better suited for, quote, someone who doesn't have a good job, and that he would not only be giving up a pivotal role at the firm, but also his financial security. However, despite these warnings, Jeff would eventually leave D.E. Shaw in 1994 and would soon go on to conceive his first business, Amazon. And it was also during this time that Jeff wanted to get married. He tasked his friends to set him up on countless blind dates. In fact, it was so many that he was, quote, somewhat of a professional blind dater. But
professional blind dater? What? Bro, Jeff Bezos is weird. Oh, on the show born 1964. Jeffrey Bezos. Wow. Ew, my eyes are all the way up here. I have no expression anymore. Oh no.
Of course, we're talking about Jeff Bezos here, and Jeff had an expansive list of criteria his future wife would need to meet, one of which being they could, quote, get him out of a third world prison. And of all the girls he was selecting, Mackenzie Scott met his criteria, and they would eventually get married after only knowing each other for around 6 months. It seemed like his life was perfect. A normal, ambitious man with a loving wife and a great career. At this point, anything was possible. Jeff was filled with meaning, and the optimism for his new startup was high. But Jeff still needed a name for his company. Maybe leaning a little too far into his business mindset, he was originally going to call Amazon Relentless. Jeff only got rid of this name when his friends convinced him that Relentless sounded a little too sinister, and also because the name Amazon would be at the top of the directory lists. So this brings us to Amazon's founding in 1994, which started with $300,000 in initial capital from the life savings of Jeff's parents. And the idea for Amazon was simple. With the rapid advancements of the internet, Amazon would serve as a book shipping company that would operate fully online. And as soon as Amazon went live, the company's success was immediate. In fact, when the company went
Amazon was a bookstore.
Amazon had already raised $54 million in just its first year, and then by 1999, this number had grown over 1,000%. Everything was going perfectly. That was until the dot-com crash in March 2000, where every online business would be decimated. Even companies that Amazon itself had invested in, such as Pets.com and Cosmo, were financially ruined and vanished from the face of the internet. Amazon was bleeding profits every month, eventually losing 95% of their market value.
Jeffrey Bezos, we need your help,
plummeting
please.
From over $100 per share to just $6, and the company was almost bankrupt by the tail end of the financial crash. However, unlike most, Amazon was somehow still able to remain afloat, and once 2002 came round, Amazon was back to making record profits.
That smile is crazy.
The survival of Amazon as a company is almost entirely attributed to Jeff Bezos' ruthlessly cost-efficient and intelligent managerial decisions. Although this approach wasn't anything new for Jeff, Amazon had been keeping their business expenses to the bare minimum throughout the dot-com bubble. In addition to this, the company employed a marketing strategy that allowed them to receive customer payments for books before they were bought by Amazon themselves, which meant the only items in their inventory were things customers actually paid for. However, there's a catch. In fact, according to a former Amazon engineer who worked at the company for over 6 years, Jeff Bezos makes, quote, ordinary control freaks look like stoned hippies. And Jeff wouldn't tolerate any dissent either, as Jeff was infamously known to hand out passive-aggressive sticky notes, reminding employees who contradicted his orders who's really in charge and who's paying for their salary.
That's crazy. I have a meme somewhere, man. It's like Jeff Bezos when an employee tries to take a bathroom break, and it's a picture of Darth Vader force choking someone in the air. I wanted to find it and prepare it for stream, but I couldn't find it, man. So sad. So sad.
In fact, Bezos had such disdain for his employees that he often remarked that employees should actually be
not wearing anything under this.
And once the storm of the dot-com bubble left, Amazon was back on track to making consistent profits. But Jeff's ruthless management would only get worse from here.
That face.
In 2002, he issued a letter to his employees demanding that all of his computer engineering teams would need to redesign their systems infrastructure from the ground up. And his message also included a nice little note promising to fire every single engineer who wasn't able to pull this off. But it was through this ruthless behavior that Amazon became the business we know today. And a few years later in 2006, Amazon would start to take over the world. It was in this time when they would launch Amazon Web Services, which quickly started to dominate the growing field of cloud computing. The service was initially a subsidiary of Amazon that harvested website traffic data to be sold to other online retailers. But eventually this service grew to be one of the largest website hosting and internet infrastructure platforms in the world. Traditionally, if you're a company and needed computation, you would build a data center. But eventually, this service grew to be one of the largest website hosting and internet infrastructure platforms in the world. Traditionally, if you're a company and needed computation, you would build a data center. But with all this cost and time, none of this would add any value to what the business was doing. It was just the price of admission for being online. At the time, Amazon was wasting so much time and money building data centers to sustain their monumentous growth. So Jeff's genius idea was to create the web services for everyone. By creating service in bulk, Amazon became the cheapest and most reliable way of keeping your site online.
Wow, imagine working for Jeff Bezos and he's so mean to you. Wait, imagine working for Jeff Bezos and he's so mean to you and you just see him in public just like smiling like, hey guys. That'd be so infuriating.
And luckily for Amazon, Amazon Web Services faced no competition for around 7 years.
Ooh.
In the online world, this is unprecedented. Almost all new inventions are copied by at least 2 years. But by getting this big 7-year gap to expand its share of the market, Amazon was now poised to control the entire internet. By doing this, Jeff Bezos cemented his power across the entire globe, all of which would become apparent in later years. But this wasn't the only thing Jeff was looking to capitalize on. He was always searching for new methods to take advantage of potential market growth areas.
Wait, no, keep playing the video, man.
And it was through this mindset that led to the inception of Kindle in 2007. While smaller publishers initially favored Jeff's idea for this new kind of book distribution, they didn't realize how much disdain he had for the publishing industry. And once these publishers began to rely on Amazon.com for their sales, Jeff ordered his negotiators to approach them, quote, the way a cheetah would pursue a sickly gazelle, where he started to demand more favorable contract terms that even Amazon themselves.
He's a furry too.
And after the Kindle launched, it only took 3 years for the book sales on Kindle to completely outsell hardbacks, and it soon became one of the primary mediums for people to read books. But a more sinister breakthrough was with Amazon Alexa, a voice-activated speaker that interacts with your voice. Now this might seem like a seemingly simple and useful speaker, processing over 100,000 commands. However,
bro, it farts at you. It farts at you.
Line to Amazon.
It literally farts at you, man. What are you talking about? One of the best technology advances in the world. It farts at you, bro. Ask it to fart and it'll do it. Born 1964, Jeffrey Bezos. Crazy. Okay.
All your information is sent to the Amazon cloud.
Oh.
And I mean everything you say, everything you command Alexa to do, has all been recorded and stored permanently. And this information is extremely valuable to Amazon. In fact, this is where Amazon makes its money from Alexa. I mean, of course, Alexa itself isn't the product. That's why this smart speaker is so incredibly cheap. It's also that every time people around the world talk to Alexa, Amazon makes a profit. And by doing this, smart speakers are now in 1 in 5 households across the US.
Wow.
And then the more comfortable you get with Alexa being a part of your daily life, the more information and thus the more money Bezos can extract from you and the population. And who knows what's actually happening with this data? But it might raise some concerns considering that Jeff Bezos sits on a Pentagon board. Not to mention Jeff Bezos' $600 million deal with the CIA.
God, a humpback, man. Looks like I have a second back. That's crazy. That's my chair.
Before we continue, I want to talk to you about today's sponsor, Private Internet Access. Private Internet Access stops
I wish I had money I could spend on the internet, but I can't, man. Sorry about that.
Despite all the new markets Amazon was beginning to conquer, this didn't alleviate Jeff's temperament. In fact, his outbursts were only getting worse. He was known to regularly go ballistic whenever he deemed an employee not meeting his standards. All while he'd smile to the public looking like an innocent little nerd. But behind his fake smiling face was a monster. Many of
Oh. He's comparing him to Hitler, no way.
That he flew into a rage so often that there would be a noticeable blood vessel bulging in his head during the tirades. The money Amazon was making also played no part in cooling Jeff's temper, as he was already a multi-billionaire by this point. However, billions weren't enough. Jeff wanted the world, and this would start to happen when the little-known Jeff Bezos would become a household name. During this time, Jeff would begin his first step into major company acquisitions, with his $250 million purchase of the then-failing Washington Post. Jeff saw that although the company was being run well in terms of physical newspaper distribution, they were really failing in the area of online delivery. Looking back now, Jeff's reasoning for acquiring the news outlet is fairly questionable, with him explaining that the advancements of the internet was, quote, eroding all the traditional advantages the newspapers had. And who knows what he really meant by that. But the Washington Post was now essentially a mouthpiece for Jeff to say whatever he wanted, using the legacy and trust the company had built up over decades. And while the company did start financially succeeding under his management, it certainly wasn't because of an improvement in journalism quality. Jeff's newspaper is almost entirely interchangeable with all the other publishing outlets that spout the same neoliberal agenda. Quote, think twice before changing the tax rules to soak billionaires. However, not all business magnates are created in equal eyes, according to the Washington Post, as Elon Musk's recent Twitter purchase is something Jeff Bezos could not abide by. According to the newspaper, billionaires acquiring media platforms is now something to be worried about, since they could soon start having too much influence over the public, which is true, but this is coming from Jeff Bezos. But even more unsurprising is that through Jeff Bezos' control of the Washington Post, he now
I thought like I was wearing sandals.
Bezos. But even more unsurprising is that through Jeff
Wow.
Bezos' control of the Washington Post, he now also controls the mainstream narrative surrounding him. Because of course, the Washington Post can't criticize anything about Jeff Bezos or Amazon. Even writers for the Washington Post working for other media companies can't criticize Amazon.
There was a guy who was a writer for the Washington Post, wrote something in the Huffington Post that was critical of Amazon, and he got disciplined at the Washington Post for doing that.
Not to mention, Jeff
Whoa.
Bezos has donated hundreds of millions to other major media
They
networks
tracked him
like
down.
CNN and MSNBC. And by doing this, Bezos is always protected. Like, for example, the time he cheated on his
CNN.
wife.
Huh? Wow, of course it did. World's richest man caught cheating.
And began sending unsolicited pictures of
I want, huh? I want to smell you. I want to breathe you. I want to hold you.
his
I'm in love with you. Huh?
third leg. And
His third leg.
after doing this, some of these photos were leaked. Now, for any other person, this would get them cancelled or labelled as a creep, crushing their reputation entirely. But if you have enough money and power, the media comes to your defense. Like the legacy
Your wiener's small. Jeff Bezos, face it.
Watergate journalist
That blurriness, those pixels, man, they explain
Bob
everything.
Woodward, passionately supporting Bezos, telling him how proud and supportive he is of Jeff, with the Washington Post literally creating an article saying Jeff Bezos stands his ground. In fact, me telling you about this incident might be the first you've ever heard of it, and that's because
Whoa.
Jeff Bezos decides who the media attacks and who it praises.
Bro, if I'm... Oh no, man. If his video gets taken down, I'm like the only proof left. I'm the last one standing between the truth and Jeff Bezos.
However,
Oh,
when it
no.
comes to independent journalists, Jeff is very happy to send his team to dox and censor them into silence.
To dox them?
Like when Jeff
Okay, I'm gonna delete everything. Jeff Bezos, I'm sorry. Oh
the
no.
Washington Post were going to
Wait, Amazon is linked to Twitch too. Oh no. He is my boss. Jeff Bezos, I'm sorry. Please. Please. I don't get paid.
harass the family
I'm
of
sorry.
the lady
I'm
running
sorry.
the Twitter page, Libs of TikTok.
is
Because at the
that?
time the Post couldn't find Libs of TikTok, they would actually harass her family instead, threatening her
Hmm?
innocent family, saying, quote, "You're being implicated in starting a hate
For
campaign
what?
against LGBTQ people." The Washington Post published an article by Taylor Lorenz announcing Libs of TikTok's name, address, and real estate licensing information. So it starts to be pretty clear the other reason why Jeff controls so much of the media. It's convenient for Amazon hiding a lot of disgraceful and borderline illegal acts, which if the public found out, would destroy Jeff Bezos' reputation for life. I mean, the people fueling Jeff Bezos' riches live in dystopian squalor, with Amazon's working environments being
Why is their face on his TV?
highly toxic. I mean, the company literally encourages workers to snitch on each other over the most minor of differences.
Jeff Bezos. Listen, Jeff Bezos. This guy, Bob, he kind of put his pencil down in the wrong way. He wasn't. Ow, frick, ow, ouch, owie. He put his freaking, what is it called? Put his pencil on a 46-degree angle instead of the normal 45. Come on. My coffee was not hot enough, man. It was like 98 instead of 99.
Amazon literally has a system called the Anytime Feedback Tool, which is an internal company phone allowing individuals to complain in secret to their managers. A system kind of like the Gestapo.
Karens
By
would
doing
love
this,
that.
This deliberately creates a workplace culture of tension and mistrust, which is extremely useful for Bezos to prevent
look at me.
unionization, something Amazon does everything in their power to prevent. They have dedicated resources to prevent the formation of unions ever since the company's founding in 1994. This is accomplished by having employees under constant surveillance from inside the warehouses to private Facebook group chats being monitored by HR, and Amazon regularly holding meetings about why unionization would be bad for business. The company actually hires anti-union consultants and even posted job listings for intelligence analysts who can monitor labor organizing threats. Amazon is infamous for its anti-union propaganda. Like this presentation they sent out to the whole company, telling workers to snitch on one another when they hear phrases like compensation, diversity, robots, or injustice.
Oh.
This is how little they think of the workers. And when workers aren't ratting on one another, if they make a slight error, Amazon's new wristband will track and buzz workers when they make the wrong movements. It's at a point now where Jeff Bezos thinks so little of his workers.
Bro, he's gonna genetically like put like chips in their DNA and then
That he treats
At that
them like
point,
human cattle. Considering these conditions Amazon employees are put
What?
under, it's no wonder a majority of them are attempting to unionize.
Bro, my sister used to work at Amazon, man. I feel so scared for her now.
Their conditions are some of the most brutal you can find in first world countries. These Amazon factories are analogous to sweatshops. Amazon also has numerous warehouse cameras using an algorithm that analyzes the efficiency of every subordinate's actions. For example, if you're moving boxes,
This is
you better go
scary.
fast because a computer is monitoring your every move, calculating how much time is lapsed between each of the items you interact with. Or if you're driving delivery trucks for Amazon, things are much better either. Shift schedules are so strict that drivers are often forced to urinate in plastic bottles or to prevent any clock time being wasted. At the start, Jeff Bezos used his media power to deny these claims, tweeting out things like, "You don't really believe the peeing in bottles thing, do you?" But after thorough investigation, Amazon was later forced to admit that the stories were true after multiple documents proved it.
What?
Even with the evidence coming out, Amazon avoided full responsibility by claiming the issue was, quote, industry-wide.
Industry-wide. What other industry does this? You only pee in a bottle when like you really need to go on a road trip and you can't stop anywhere. Are you serious? Bro, at least put a bathroom in the trucks or something, man. At least.
But I don't think it is industry-wide. I really don't think most companies are using algorithms to
That's
analyze
what
and
I'm
rank
saying.
each of its workers. And
Rank.
the algorithm is deadly. If a worker falls below a certain threshold in the algorithm, these workers are then automatically fired. And not even by a real person, but just by a computer. This is exactly what happened to a 63-year-old Army veteran who was terminated for problems outside his control, like locked apartment complexes preventing him from making deliveries. And even with all I just mentioned, this doesn't even include all the exhaustingly long shifts, considerably
Look at how
break
much they have to
times,
do.
and workplace injury rates that are 3 times the national average compared to other warehouse occupations. But Jeff Bezos does this for a reason. By squeezing every drop of sweat from his workers, he can then reinvest this into gaining more and more control. That's why Amazon's been purchasing companies specializing in home security, pharmaceuticals, self-driving cars, grocery markets, facial recognition technology, airlines, and now even space travel. But Jeff Bezos isn't only conquering the physical world. By using Amazon's web services, Amazon now controls 90% of the internet, having full control of the switch for websites like Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch.
Jeff Bezos, this is slander against your name. I don't support Moon. I don't know who Moon is. Moon? What is that? The only moon I know is a planet. So, Jeff, I will report his channel and give me like $100, please, bro. Please. I'm kidding. I'm sorry. I'll never make that joke again. I'm sorry. I'll deliver stuff for you. Moon is a moon. Be quiet, bro. See, this is a supporter of Moon right here. My chat. Jeff, you can take him, not me, please.
This is why when Amazon's web services go down, almost every other company falls down with it.
Oh,
There's
no.
so many companies that rely on Amazon at this point. Reddit, IMDb, Spotify, Pinterest, Imgur, the CIA, and over 80 other consumer brand websites. Despite the many platforms and businesses they provide for, this still doesn't stop Amazon from competing with them if it can turn a profit. This includes companies who rely on Amazon for hosting, as well as all those who sell their products through Amazon itself. A major example of this, though, can be seen with Netflix. Netflix, like almost all websites, use Amazon's web services. However, this is becoming very risky for Netflix, due to Amazon setting up direct competition with Netflix through Prime Video.
Oh.
Music is another key industry the company is currently making steps towards.
The Boys is crazy.
Now being a direct competitor to other services like iTunes and another platform they host, Spotify. Now you may be thinking, who would ever use that over iTunes and Spotify? But Amazon being an industry leader in voice recognition and virtual assistants means there is already significant potential. As we speak, there are people watching Amazon Prime Video while playing Amazon Music that's controlled by an Amazon Alexa they bought from Amazon.com, which of course runs on Amazon Web Services. All of this streamlining and centralization of products is why they are so intent on entering and cornering every possible market they can. Those who sell physical items through Amazon also have to deal with the company's massive influence influence, which allows them to dictate the cost of nearly anything being sold on the website. If pricing someone out doesn't work, Amazon can simply alter their search algorithms to benefit themselves and get the products they sell shown fast. Because when it comes to competition, Amazon is absolutely ruthless. They have so much money that whenever another company tries to compete with them, Amazon can afford to sell at a loss until the competitor eventually runs out of business, making Amazon almost a monopoly. And despite this ethically questionable market strategy and the massive amounts of revenue the company generates on a yearly basis, they still consistently get tax cuts from the government. With these tax cuts happening, even though Jeff Bezos has gone on record in many occasions stating in interviews how hard he works to dodge taxes. I mean, have you ever wondered why Amazon was founded in Washington instead of California's Silicon Valley like almost every other big tech company? Well, Jeff has no problem admitting he did this entirely to avoid California's sales tax. And throughout the company's history, Amazon's aversion to paying tax has become central to their name. Over the 20 years they've been operating, Bezos has been deliberately avoiding sales tax in the majority of other states. In 2018, the company reported an all-time high of over $10 billion in profits.
So he gets to avoid
they paid
tax
a grand total
fraud.
of $0.00 in federal income taxes. But I guess there are some benefits to Amazon's ruthless rise. I mean, workers at Amazon can now live in a wagey cage. At least Amazon provides its workers a meaningful lifestyle, where they can work in a box, live in constant anxiety of being fired, wee in their bottles, and then go back to their pod in a decaying dystopian megacity, where they'll be shuttled through grindly slow, packed public transport through a dangerous urban sprawl, only to repeat the cycle every day of every week of every month of every year, eating impossible Whopper burgers, ordering their foods, essentials, and gifts all through Amazon, where they'll go back to work in an Amazon wagey cage, being fed constant propaganda from Bezos' media empire, spending their only free time on an internet that's infrastructure is controlled by Amazon. Not to mention all the apps and major sites that Bezos partially owns, where an Amazon worker can then go back to watch their Amazon Prime while listening to their Amazon Music on their spying Alexa, paying tax.
Bro, everyone on Amazon working right now, leave, quit your job. Work at McDonald's. McDonald's is better compared to all of this, bro. Bro, everyone leave Amazon. If Amazon goes down, Twitch is going down with them. I don't care. If I die, he dies. Come on, man. Everyone leave Twitch. Wait, no.
That doesn't tax
Leave
Bezos'
Amazon.
inconceivable
Leave
wealth.
Amazon.
A government that actually begs Bezos to direct it. All of
Everyone,
this
give
to
up.
continue feeding
Quit.
Bezos' domination over you. And with our economy
Hey, yo.
teetering on the verge of collapse, Bezos will then be able to buy up more businesses, more shares, more assets, and more wealth, becoming ever more in control of your daily lives. All while normal people are forced into factories, treated like human cattle, fed continual propaganda. All of
That's
this just
crazy.
to keep the same system feeding Bezos' swollen ego. It's clear that we now live in a world where elected officials no longer control our economy or politics. The democratic vote no longer exists.
You know what? I was scared of you, Jeff Bezos. But not anymore. Jeff Bezos, you a bitch. You hear that? Yeah, I said it. What are you gonna do, bro? Oh no. Oh no. Oh
How
no.
could it?
I'm so
When
scared.
billionaires have control of the entire world's infrastructure, control of the CIA, seats at the Pentagon, spyware in millions
How,
of
man?
households, algorithms that dictate the markets, and a personal fortune worth more than entire nations. Free market capitalism is no longer a unifying nation-building philosophy.
His
because
eye
we've
is
abandoned
crazy.
meritocracy in favor of socialism for the rich, laboring under a society and economic system that has now abandoned all of us.
That is crazy. I don't know how it could get any better, man. I don't know how it can get any better, man. Like the video, I mean.
CNN, once the most trusted name in news, is now crumbling into the ground, with CNN recording a 90% decline in viewership.
Okay, we're gonna watch one more. I don't know if it's gonna be as interesting,
CNN,
but yeah.
once the most trusted name in news, is now crumbling into the ground.
Okay,
with
okay,
CNN
okay.
recording a 90% decline in viewership in just 1 year. This was highlighted back in January. On January 3rd, 2021, CNN recorded 2.7 million viewers for the week. On January 3rd, 2022, this number was 548,000. And in this last week of June 20th, 2022, CNN recorded their lowest ratings in 22 years, averaging a tiny 56,000 viewers.
That's still a lot,
CNN to
man.
lay off its CEO, Jeff Zucker. This is in conjunction
What
with
the?
CNN's
Jeff Bezos, Zuckerberg? Oh no. They're fusing together. It's the end of the world. Yeah, just wait.
catastrophic failure with CNN Plus, a subscription model set to rival
Plus.
Netflix, with over $300 million in funding, going on to
No one's
gain
ever
only
gonna
a
rival
measly
Netflix except for
10,000
Amazon Prime.
subscribers, causing the service to be shut down in just 3 weeks. It's clear to everyone that CNN is seeing its final days, and for most, this won't be a surprise. Then what caused CNN to go from being the most trusted name in news, with a first-class reputation and millions of viewers, to now scraping the barrel for views with a god-awful reputation? Well, in this video, we're going to go over the certain actions CNN took, which ended up destroying the company entirely. And it all started back with the CNN founder, Ted Turner.
Ted Wiener? Timmy Turner?
Although Ted Turner may be a massive name in the TV industry today, this wasn't always the case. Ted wasn't always destined to control the mainstream media, because simply put, Ted's path in life didn't always seem to be on the right track. Back in his early 20s, he was expelled from his university after he brought a girl back to his dorm room. And when he returned to his home in the South in the late 60s, Ted began a simple life working for his father Billboard business. However, after working on this company for several years, this small company would become $1 million empire. Ted was now put in his first position of real leadership. And while for a few years he carried on the success of the business, he would soon realize that this really wasn't his passion. Yes, he did have the money, but he wasn't following his intuition. He wanted something greater. And so instead he would invest in several small radio stations, followed by a struggling Atlanta cable TV station. By doing this, Ted had no idea that he would change his life forever, because this was where Ted first learned the power of 24/7 broadcasting. Because among the low-cost shows his TV station would broadcast, the one that really brought in the business was the 3 a.m. comedy news program, where Turner would once joke that he had a 100% share in the time slot. It was so popular at this time, and yet no one was broadcasting or competing. And so Ted would continue to grow the channel. By doing this, he realized the power of early morning broadcasts. There was no competition, and yet night workers, students, and people with weird sleep schedules would all tune into the show, with this little time slot being wildly successful. However, Turner's real goldmine would come 4 years later, where new satellite technology enabled him to broadcast not just to Atlanta, but to the whole US. This skyrocketed his small collection of channels into a growing media empire. Paying cable subscribers went up to 2 million, and Ted's personal net worth broke $100 million during this time. He even bought both the Atlanta Braves and the Atlanta Hawks. Ted had only just been given the rights to broadcast their games, but now he owned them entirely. And then 2 years later, the kernel that would become CNN had been born. And little did Ted know that this was his path to power and billions. Before CNN was even invented, Ted would have to go into talks and negotiations with his fellow media executives to found a 24/7 news network. This sort of thing had never been done before. There was no one to copy from, but with the success of his burgeoning empire, and the success of his 3 a.m. comedy news program, and Ted would take a huge gamble. This project would cost up to $20 million just to start, and this didn't even include the running costs.
Let's
On top
go,
of
let's
this,
go.
other broadcasting executives told him a successful 24/7 news station would not be possible. No one would watch it. There were serious doubts from all investors that there was any market for an around-the-clock news station. It just seemed that such a channel would never be profitable. And yet, despite all the skeptics, Turner had seemingly full confidence in his idea and stated that CNN would be the greatest achievement in the history of journalism. And whilst this certainly isn't the case now, CNN would undoubtedly make major advancements in journalism and change the way news was televised forever. And on June 1st, 1980, CNN was broadcasted for the first time.
Show footage, please.
CNN would quickly mount up, the first one being budgetary issues. Compared to other media giants at the time like CBS, NBC, and ABC, CNN's funding was substantially less. They were running on extremely tight margins, because investors still believed that there was no profit to be made with them.
Am I seriously sleepy right now? Are you kidding me? Bro, stay awake. Fat Rat, you're watching something right now. Are you kidding me? How are you sleepy when you're... Oh my gosh, man. Nah, man.
business. And then added onto this was CNN's financial constraints, which were exacerbated by the network operating 24/7, which meant even more attention had to be paid to their budget due to the increased workload relative to other outlets. And so for the next 15 years, CNN would always struggle on this reduced budget, only being kept afloat by their innovative coverage, advertising deals, and dodgy investors. At the time, larger networks often derided CNN, referring to it as the, quote,
Chicken Noodle Network.
because of its comparatively
There's no way.
financial footprint. However, this would all change in 1996, when Time Warner bought the entirety of Turner's media empire, which included CNN. This injection of funds put CNN in direct competition with other large networks. But there was a catch. CNN would find itself at the mercy of its new shareholders. And as the company that bought them continued to rapidly grow, so too did CNN's obligations to toe the party line for their shareholders. Being part of this huge conglomerate meant that there were lots of powerful people to please, and this ended up reflecting negatively on the network, introducing a lot of bias into their reports. But the results of this would later become
What the? Who is he? He looks
However, in
gay.
this time, this corporate backing and 24/7 broadcasting meant that CNN was the superior choice for news coverage. It had all the money and connections to find the best journalists and the best marketing. This was a change of pace compared to other networks, as CNN would be televising all kinds of news rather than just stories that made headlines. And because of this unique approach, CNN was able to maintain a respectively sized loyal audience during the early years. In fact, in the first 10 years of CNN's development, CNN actually had a very loyal fan base. Another way CNN differed from their competition was through their on-site reporting over confining themselves to a newsroom. This would often make CNN the first or only station to catch historic events as they were unfolding. The earliest example of which was their footage during the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan in 1981, where CNN would be the first station to break the story on air. But even more famously was with the Challenger disaster. At the time of the Challenger's launch, CNN was the only network.
Bro. I saw this clip. Like, everyone's probably seen it already, but there's a clip of a president. He almost got shot, and when he heard the gunshot, he said, "You missed," and he kept talking. That was so crazy, man. Best president in the world. Forgot who that was.
No one else in the news was reporting
You
24/7
missed.
coverage of this event.
How embarrassing
and
is
then
that?
once the Challenger exploded live on air, CNN's ratings would go through the roof. Because back then there was no Fox News, MSNBC, or even internet for people to watch this tragedy. CNN was the public's only option. The whole nation's attention was focused solely through their lens. The final event that cemented CNN as a major news organization and catapulted them past their competition was their on-site reporting during the coverage of the Gulf War.
But what?
In 1991, CNN was the only news outlet to get reporters inside Iraq during the initial bombing campaigns. Their coverage was shown across many different networks internationally, which resulted in CNN receiving over 1 billion concurrent viewers around the world. Their overall coverage of the war was groundbreaking. The American government even coined the term the CNN effect to describe the role 24/7 news has on determining the real-time decisions from public officials. It was clear that CNN was becoming unstoppable. Ted's vision was coming to life.
We're talking about CNN this, Fox News this, but where's BBC at? Where's BBC at, man? I want BBC. Wait, no, not like that, not like that. Wait.
Golden years for CNN, where their anchors showcase their brilliant, non-biased style throughout
No,
live reports from Bernard Shaw,
no, not like that, not like that, not like that. Not like that, bro, not like that. No.
All the other American news companies had fled Baghdad.
No.
But only CNN stayed. Their reporters camped out in a hotel. From this modest base of operations, these reporters risked life and limb to bring the truth to the world. The footage is still available today. You can hear bombs being dropped in the distance.
That's so creepy.
Seeing explosions and fire from their hotel window just 3 miles away. And although the reporters lacked the ability to send live footage in the opening hours of the war, their radio-style coverage was the closest viewers would get to the conflict. These first hours of the war would become a landmark in CNN's rise. Later on in the year, when the Iraqi government expelled all Western correspondents, CNN was somehow the only ones allowed to stay. This was because of their tireless work to build a relationship with the government, meaning they had a monopoly on in-person coverage of the war. And this is what CNN had been built on, for 24/7 unbiased live coverage. At this time of crisis, it was exactly exactly what the world needed. And although there was a lot of propaganda, fake footage, and very dodgy things within the company, these
Yeah, it's
reporters
so
did
messed
provide
up.
coverage that could get the viewer the closest to the conflict. And because these CNN reporters were the only ones on the scene, their coverage ended up being seen by billions. And then there were other famous anchors that would make their name. Christine Ampor and Wolf Blitzer, to name a couple. Ampor would build her reputation on CNN's trademark in-person coverage, whilst Blitzer would keep the show running at home, reporting straight from the Pentagon in the opening hours of the war. Blitzer served as the essential connection between the people and the reporters. All these reporters were going to play pivotal roles in CNN's future. Although it wasn't always perfect, this more pure style of hard news would become CNN's ideal to strive towards, generating the reputation of the most trusted name in news. This reputation for truth and honesty was further solidified by CNN's willingness to challenge the US government's narrative. Peter Arnott in particular would gain a controversial reputation through his reporting on American bombings. Some criticized him as unpatriotic, but his unflinching commitment to the truth was truly admirable. All these reporters would then go on to play pivotal roles in CNN's future. It was
40
through
years.
this hard-style news reporting that CNN gained a massive reputation, a reputation of being the most trusted name in news.
Okay.
Whether this reputation was worthy or not, it was clear the public seemed to trust CNN. However, this
Ironic.
reputation would soon be destroyed by the disastrous actions in later years. However, for now, CNN was in its golden years. Their major successes in the Gulf War made CNN skyrocket in regular viewership and laid the groundwork for international expansion. However, other people were catching an eye of this. People like Rupert Murdoch wanted a piece of the pie, and CNN's competition was catching up. Media outlets like MSNBC, Fox News, and many others were starting to use the same journalistic model pioneered by CNN. These competitors started broadcasting 24/7 and focused more on international issues.
Okay, crazy. Okay. Frick, man. Okay, keep playing it. Yeah, keep playing it. Never stop. Never stop.
But despite all this competition,
oh
CNN
no,
was still the first cable channel to report on the September 11th attacks. Although, unlike the Challenger disaster and the Gulf War, other news outlets were able to obtain their footage of the incident, and this would start to mark the end of CNN's golden years.
Oh man.
With the competition, CNN would have to do very controversial things to gain its viewership. CNN's next focus was on the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. However, this time people were beginning to lose interest in the conflict. People just didn't really care about another war in a part of the world they had no interest in. The public was sick of all these pointless wars, and they felt like this event had no impact in their day-to-day lives.
But still, white girls went out of their way to make petitions and say, "Stop Pakistan from doing this." What is that? What is your stupid petition gonna do? What is it gonna do? They're gonna read it and like, wow, this many people signed it. Okay, guys, I think I have to stop. This many people signed a petition for us to stop, man. This says something. Let's leave. What? You're not doing anything. You're not helping. Go to war. Come on. That's the only way you could help. Bozo.
With CNN's vicious competition from other mainstream news outlets, and it seemed like CNN's empire was beginning to crack. With these foreign wars losing viewer engagement, CNN needed another medium to focus on, and they eventually settled on domestic politics. Just as they were pioneers before, CNN was also quick to adopt to online news. They launched their prototype website CNN.com in 1995. It quickly became one of the most popular news outlets on the internet. With its online and cable TV presence now established, CNN could sit back and watch its membership grow, right? Well, while their success was admirable, it didn't come without compromises, because even with all the ad revenue and weekly viewership, this still wasn't enough for CNN to take control of the American media. Rather, CNN would instead take its spot behind Fox News all through the Iraq War. So why wasn't CNN able to catapult beyond Fox? Well, Fox has always had a political bias, and through 2008, CNN tried to steer clear of becoming a network of pundits. Unfortunately, with the pressure of investors and advertisers, this middle-of-the-road style just wasn't cutting it. However, we shouldn't confuse this completely with CNN not having a bias. I mean, they've always had one key bias, and that was corporatism. And so in order to shed light on what their real bias is, we need to look at who owned them and who still owns them. On October 10th, 1996, a massive media conglomerate named Time Warner acquired Turner Broadcasting Systems, the parent company of CNN. Time Warner almost has a monopoly over American television. with subsidiaries such
Oh.
as Discover, Paramount, HBO, TNT, Travel, and
TNT?
Cartoon Network. And that
Cartoon
just names a
Network.
few
Oh,
of the
no.
100 plus channels and companies Time
Uh,
owns. And this was very effective for
Looney
Time Warner,
Tunes.
as Time Warner and its affiliates and investors would need certain talking points to influence public opinion. A process that Noam Chomsky described as manufacturing consent. Chomsky noted that
consent.
all mass media caters to the financial interests of whoever owns them. Most importantly, though, is how it affects news. In essence, large media conglomerates like Time Warner become gatekeepers of
What?
that all mass media
What
caters
was
to the
that?
financial interests of whoever owns them. Most importantly, though, is how it affects.
What? No, we gotta see this. We gotta see this. What is that? Alec Baldwin is Donald Trump. Okay, I thought. What? Where's the one where he's on the news? He's on the news, man. Man.
You is a motherfucker, you know that?
Funny, okay. Where is it? Where is it? There he is. Man.
News. In essence, large media conglomerates like Time Warner become gatekeepers of information for news cycles. And with CNN being a profit-driven business, they must do all they can to keep companies interested in advertising with them, whilst also making Time Warner's investors happy. And so with that, Chomsky argues that, quote, news media caters to the political prejudices and economic desires of their advertisers. With all of this becoming very apparent in 2008, when CNN would start to devote large chunks of resources to cover the American political environment around the 2008 election. It was this year that their partisanship would begin to swell, where they would begin to host many of the candidates in presidential debates. It was also really important to add that at this exact same time, Warner Media's CEO was now Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos? Low profile generally, but his political leanings are obvious with a little bit of digging. Jeff has made multiple donations to the Democrats over his lifetime. He's also synonymous with the coastal liberal elite. And so it seems like a weird coincidence that just as he was appointed CEO in early 2008, this also happened to be the same time that CNN descended into blatant partisanship. But weirdly in this time, it was their slightly biased political coverage that led to CNN having the highest ratings of the year, averaging over 1 million viewers, an increase of almost half compared to their previous year. This coverage then led CNN to having the highest ratings of the year, averaging over 1 million viewers, an increase of almost half compared to their previous year. But their partisanship was nothing like what we see today. In fact, CNN was still on the trend of being at the cutting edge of news. Instead of hosting a standard debate like other outlets, they instead partnered with YouTube to pitch presidential questions from the public. This innovative move would become the future of debates.
Crazy.
Despite this, it was still clear that something had changed in CNN's reporting. The reporters hadn't changed, but the content had. And studies would later show that Obama would receive nearly 70% more favorable coverage from the media, whilst John McCain would only get around 40%. This bias was across the board, but CNN was doubtlessly one of the biggest perpetrators. Of course, the bias wouldn't be as obvious as it would be later. Compared to the culture war of today, the 2008 election was nothing. And in this time, CNN's hit pieces were much more subdued, where they would only portray the Republican nominee John McCain as out of touch rather than accusing him of criminality, conspiracies, and being a Russian agent. However, it was also noticeable in this period how the reporters' tones had now become much more one-sided. The biased coverage was initially rewarded with increased ratings, which created this vicious cycle. The more controversial the stories, the more controversial the opinions, the more people that would tune in. And so CNN would slowly start to abuse the trust they had built up from years of unbiased reporting, trading it all in for the quick hit of views. Their new policy of sensationalizing every political story was popular at first, but over the coming decade, people would quickly come to resent it. And this wasn't just with the political stuff. This was through everything. For example, the term breaking news used to mean a huge amount on CNN. This would refer to things like the Challenger disaster, the First Gulf War, 9/11. It used to be reserved for only the most important stories as they unfolded. However, now, it's completely overused to the point of losing all its meaning completely.
Yeah, exactly.
If everything is breaking news, then none of it is.
Breaking
and this is why
news.
politics works so well for CNN, because they could sensationalize every little story. And this is why after 2008, CNN would seem to only broadcast entirely political content. This was at the cost of their innovative, groundbreaking, unbiased reporting. However, back then, this was still tamed. Even though it was sensational, even though it was political, it was still bearable to watch and trusted by almost everyone in the public.
Yeah.
Although nobody could have predicted just how many things would change during the presidential election in 2016.
Yo.
It's getting harder and harder to find unbiased news sources, which is why I want to tell you about today's sponsor, Ground News, the world's first news comparison platform. You see, while on June 16th, 2015, Donald Trump formally announced his candidacy for the 2016 presidential election. This announcement sent a ripple through the country, especially within the media-industrial complex. And from here, the political landscape would never be the same again. Before 2016, CNN was the go-to news network to keep up to date on what was going on in the world. And more particularly, it was the go-to place for the average American to keep up to date with the election cycle. But with this election, something had changed. Trump was now labeled by the media as an outsider. With Trump posing himself as anti-corporate, anti-big pharma, and anti-establishment, he was starting to drive all of the media against him. But of all the media against Trump, CNN's investors wanted him gone. In the early parts of his presidential run, the coverage wasn't explicitly negative, but it wasn't neutral either, because the media and public thought that he just didn't stand a chance. It was inconceivable, but over time this would start to change. Trump was starting to gather huge crowds of supporters. He was...
Bro. I hate politics. I hate politics. When I become a grown man, I'm not gonna vote. I don't care. I'm not gonna vote. I don't need to vote. I don't know. Just because he was a Republican? Are you kidding me? Man. Tisk, man.
Starting to win votes across the country. Trump memes were proliferating the internet. And in
Funny.
the debate, he was now starting to beat rivals like Ted Cruz.
You've called women you
This is kind of annoying, actually.
Pigs,
Huh?
dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account...
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
LMAO.
It became apparent that Trump was somehow connecting with the US population, and from that moment it was apparent that the election would be like no other. With Trump's wild statements, the funny speeches, the ridiculousness of the debates, and all the controversy surrounding this made the public hooked on the election, and CNN was there to capitalize on it. In fact, by focusing so much on the election, 2015 became a record year for CNN, bringing in millions of viewers every day. We're talking about even more views and money than they'd seen at the peak of the Gulf War, and that momentum would only continue into 2016. As the year continued to progress, Trump's chances of winning became higher and higher, and with this, CNN became more and more vicious against the Trump campaign. The unbiased nature that defined CNN was starting to
Hooters?
It was clear that the people pulling CNN strings were becoming threatened by Trump. And this is when CNN's partisanship became very apparent to the public, especially in contrast to how much they supported Clinton. From the minute she stole the nomination from Bernie to the day of the election, Clinton was framed as a reliable, experienced candidate, never mind the fact that she was a woman. However, for most of the public, Clinton was really just a boring career politician. No one really liked her. She didn't have the wide support of Bernie Sanders or the personality of Donald Trump. So then why was she foisted upon the American people as the best choice by CNN? Well, to answer this, we just have to follow the money.
They're both bad people.
Election data for the Clinton campaign, she received tens of millions of dollars from billionaires, hedge funds, and Wall Street. And with that, it was clear who owned Hillary Clinton. The same people that owned CNN. Which is why when Trump won the nominee, when the chances of him actually winning the presidency skyrocketed, CNN would continue to release new scandals, with every poll on CNN making clear that Trump had no chance of winning at all. And as this election continued, it was clear that CNN was becoming very partisan. And these suspicions were confirmed in October 2016, moments just before one of the key presidential debates, with WikiLeaks publishing leaked emails showing once and for all that CNN had a very liberal bias. In fact, a CNN contributor had passed the debate questions to Hillary Clinton's campaign ahead of time. In response to this, CNN anchor Chris Cuomo wouldn't apologize for these actions, but instead said that anyone who downloaded these stolen emails was a criminal.
It's illegal to possess these stolen documents. It's different for the media. So everything you learn about this, you're learning from us.
But the damage was done. CNN had been caught red-handed. However, because these sorts of instances were rare, this shadiness didn't actually hurt CNN, as 2016 was another record year in viewership for the company. Which is why CNN would never reflect on becoming too partisan. In fact, they were motivated to double down on this. Their investors wanted it, the advertisers wanted it, and seemingly, the viewers wanted it. However, behind the surface, it was becoming clear how CNN was poisoned by external interests. And I'm not some massive Trumper here or anything, but however you feel about Trump, he was the man that would slowly take down CNN's credibility. Because while the whole network got so caught up in trying to take him down, they failed to pay attention to their founding principles, all while continually giving Trump free press. And this bias also meant that through CNN's hyper-focus on Trump, this would then come at the giant cost of the hard news they had made their name on. And because of this, CNN would slowly decline. All through Trump's presidency, CNN's reputation was taking a beating. This became apparent in 2017, when CNN would continue reports on Trump being a secret Russian agent, an agent trying to overturn US democracy. They would continue to push this, making it a mainstream story, an almost established fact about Trump. And because of CNN's reach and legacy reputation, this story was never really questioned. However, later in the year, these stories would start to be questioned. After Project Veritas released a video showing leaked footage of CNN producer John Bonnefield. In the footage captured without Bonnefield knowing, he admitted that CNN's coverage on the Russian field. After Project Veritas released a video showing leaked footage of CNN producer John Bonnefield.
No. Okay, I'll stop. Okay. Wait. Okay, keep playing the video.
In the footage captured without Bonnefield knowing, he admitted that CNN's coverage on the Russia investigation was, quote, mostly bullshit. In response, CNN was saying that while the footage was real, it was acquired through deception, just like the WikiLeaks emails. However, 2 days later, Project Veritas would then release more footage showing CNN anchor Van Jones
what you did was legal,
the Russia
so we're in the
was
right.
just a nothing burger.
Makes sense.
And then CNN would be hit by another blow after footage was leaked with the CNN technical director, Charlie Chester, admitting that CNN had been engaged in negative propaganda against the Trump presidency, where he admitted that CNN's Russian story was a hoax, but pushed it anyway.
We were creating a story there that we didn't know anything about, so that's I think that's propaganda,
Why?
We had nothing else to run with at that time. We were like just taking shots off the bow, just hoping something would hit,
In the footage,
it's called Bo.
Would also note that him and his team are specifically told by the CEO what to push on the news. But again, why did CNN take such a hard turn? Why were they doing this? Because by 2017, their ratings showed that people were starting to get sick of always talking about Trump. I mean, when you compare CNN's modern anchors like Brian Stelter with CNN's award-winning coverage of the Gulf War, questions start to be raised. Remember, CNN is owned by Time Warner, a media conglomerate that has its own agenda. And of course, CNN's primary revenue stream comes from adverts. So what those parties want is what CNN parrots, which might have been why a Harvard study found that on 93 of the first 100 days of Trump's presidency, CNN broadcasted negative coverage of Trump's presidency. It was non-stop partisanship. It was because of these constant boring barrages against Trump, and with CNN constantly turning to identity politics for views, that their viewership would now begin to drop. And this wasn't just with Trump. Their attacks would come at anyone going against the establishment's wishes. I mean, after alienating the center and the right with their constant hit pieces and absurd claims, CNN would then go on to alienate lots of the left as well. This was because of their commitment to a certain brand of corporate liberalism, the kind championed by their investors and their ESG ratings. Other parts of the left were vilified in the same way as Trump. Bernie Sanders' campaign was particularly targeted. Because his politics went against the corporate interests of CNN, CNN would then be flagrantly biased against him. In the 2020 Democratic primary debates, on-screen graphics would clearly favor his opponents. One of these read, quote, Sanders' proposal would double federal spending over a decade. How will he avoid bankrupting the country? Things like this were commonplace, manufacturing consent against Bernie's campaign from the outset. And this is just one of the ways that CNN would shoot themselves in the foot. Because if CNN was losing the right, the center, and the left, who was even the demographic anymore? CNN's average viewership went from 1.3 million to 980,000 viewers in just 2 years. But this was nothing compared to when Trump would leave office, with CNN's viewership looking like this. Because CNN chose to milk identity politics rather than produce unbiased news reporting. They had trampled on their core principles for a quick buck. And by looking for the easiest way to gain views and please investors, they had lost the reputation that was central to their success. And that's why in the last year or so, CNN has now been scraping the barrel for views, insulting and degrading independent voices that weren't owned by the establishment. Like that infamous time when CNN's in-house medical advisor tried to smear Joe Rogan for taking horse dewormer. which ended up backfiring even more against CNN's credibility, with most people in this controversy actually trusting Joe Rogan over CNN.
What?
CNN are clearly rattled by the Joe Rogan treatments for coronavirus. Why do they keep this story alive? Why do they refuse to apologize for their potentially libelous framing of Joe Rogan's individual, autonomous, personal actions?
And at the same time, this has fueled their biggest competitor, Fox, to capitalize on CNN's failings, with Fox of all media companies now setting themselves up as the anti-establishment news agency. Gone was the stuffy, warmongering Bill O'Reilly, in was the ex-CNN host Tucker Carlson. And unlike CNN, Fox would be directly right-wing, and they wouldn't try to hide their overt bias. People know what they're getting with Fox. They knew the sort of opinions and narrative they would talk about. And amazingly to Fox's credit, of all the media companies, they're the one that actually starts to question stories on big tech, China, Jeff Bezos, and Big Pharma. And with that, Fox has seen a bit of a renaissance, which is really saying something here, because Fox is also a poison news network run by the devil himself, Rupert Murdoch. I mean, if Fox of all companies is now seen as the resistance, this shines a light on how badly CNN has fallen. I mean, let's just look at the statistics. In the key demographic of people aged 25 to 54, Fox now has 3 times as many viewers for the day than CNN, becoming the most watched news network overall, snatching the mantle from CNN completely. And it's only getting much, much worse for CNN. The consequence of their partisanship and declining quality became very apparent when they tried to introduce CNN Plus. CNN Plus was meant to be a paid subscription service that would shelter them against the dropping ratings for traditional media. This new streaming service was given $300 million in funding and was expected to gain 2 million subscribers in its opening year. However, after releasing, the numbers were just 10,000, a measly 0.5% of their expected viewership. And this was even after lowering their price, causing the service to be instantly shut down, only lasting 3 measly weeks. CNN Plus was a sinister sign for the whole company, with CNN now only averaging around 178,000 viewers in their key demographic, a 63% decline since 2021. It's becoming radically clear that the anchors have to stop their partisan praise for the establishment before it's too late. They have to go back to their roots of non-partisan news, of unbiased, brave reporting. If CNN wants to be taken seriously, it can't have anchors like Don Lemon and Brian Stelter. It has to somehow toe the middle ground, which is what CNN is now desperately trying to do. Following the abysmal launch of CNN Plus, CNN's new CEO Chris Licht indicated that he wants to return to CNN's roots as non-partisan. To enforce this view, Licht wants CNN to move away from the partisan debate panels and to use less alarmist banners. In fact, he has already started pushing mandates for banners not to use the words breaking news and to get rid of anchors like Brian Stelter. He also sent an internal memo for all of the company, urging them to be advocates for the truth. He then said, quote, "Too many people have lost trust in news media. I think we can be a beacon in regaining that trust by being an organization that exemplifies the best characteristics in journalism. Fearlessly speaking truth to power, challenging the status quo, and questioning, quote, groupthink." And hopefully this comes true, but in my view, it's just too late. Their reputation has been irreversibly damaged. No one trusts CNN anymore, and for good reason. They've alienated all of their audience, and their motto of being the most trusted name in news has now crumbled into dust.
That's tough, man. Oh man, CNN is garbo, BBC better, that's about it. Wow, man. Well, I'm about to fall asleep, man, not gonna lie, man. That was the end of the stream. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, do what you want. And see you next stream. Bye bye.